For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Good morning. Things relatively positive as far as Asia Pacific is concerned, and globally, as it looks like the banking crisis in the United States, whatever you think about it, is actually okay for the moment. What appears to be happening is that US banks, the major US banks, are supporting the regional ones. Now, who's to say this won't change in the future? But for the moment, I'm not a fee barrel investor. I'm just telling you what's happening in the markets right now, and they've reacted quite positively to that as far as Asia Pacific is concerned. In China itself, Didi, the ride-hailing giant, is sort of moving out from the ban that, remember, it floated in New York in 2021. And the Chinese authorities clamped down on it because they were worried about the information that it was collecting about its customers and so on. Now it's emerging from under that regulation, and it's going to expand quite rapidly within China. So that'll do its stock, I would imagine, a load of good. New Zealand is the latest to ban TikTok from government. From government instruments like the government devices, phones, computers, and so on. It's banning TikTok from that. They're worried about cybersecurity. That's almost with immediate effect. In the United States, by the end of March, the UK did the same yesterday with immediate effect. As far as the US is concerned, and so there was a lot of action. Basically, it centered around a bank called First Republic, which is one of the federal banks. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with First Republic at the moment, but it was felt that because it had a similar kind of unsecured debts. It's not about its capital adequacy, unsecured debts in the same way, but it's very different from SVB and also from the other banks that were caught up in it. So what happened was that major banks within the United States, as it were, started depositing money with this. They started depositing about $30 billion between them, and the other one that was in doubt yesterday, of course, was Signature Bank, which was closed down on Friday. The feeling is that these smaller banks may have come under pressure, but this is being seen as a big vote of confidence in the banking system. For her part, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, remember I was telling you yesterday how she was about to speak in front of the Senate? Well, she did, and what she said was pleased a lot of them by saying, look, the Fed and the United States national funds are not backing everything. They're not backing unsecured debts. All we're doing at the moment is looking at banks which are viable, and hence, and we want to stop the contagion. That's all she's saying. This is not a carte blanche for bad debts, which I think people are very, very worried about. They call that sort of moral persuasion, don't they, when things go wrong. And at the FOMC, let me draw your attention to this, meets next week to decide on interest rates. Now, a really difficult task for the Fed because of all this banking. Do they actually start clamping down, or do we look forward to what they're going to do in May? I suspect probably the latter, although this hasn't stopped hawkish talk from the Fed. As far as France is concerned, within the European Union, President Macron has overridden Parliament to try to push through the raising of the retirement age to 64 from 62, and this is under Article 49.3 of the French National Constitution, which Parliament can override if it thinks it's necessary. Now, this doesn't stop an opposition party, as it may well do, starting a no confidence vote in the French government, particularly in Macron. Macron's linked this to his Renaissance part of it, linked it also to himself as well. Doesn't stop them doing that. They've got until 3 p.m. The European time to do that today, and may well be, but at the moment it looks as though there will be considerable strikes within France against that. Credit Suisse, now yesterday, it didn't quite happen within our talking time yesterday, but certainly through the day, Rotus and I were discussing the business about Credit Suisse, and it got, the shares are up about 18% this morning. It got its 54 billion euro loan from the Swiss central bank. The Swiss central bank was very, very keen to say yesterday, look, Credit Suisse is fine. All we're doing is we understand it's got a liquidity problem. Existentially, the bank is absolutely fine. I think we wait to see about that. And the Saudis who started all this, the Saudi National Bank said no more money for Credit Suisse. They say they are, in inverted commas, rather surprised at the sort of panic, and they feel as though the government is doing everything that it can do to make sure that ECB now raised deposit rates quite as expected yesterday, from 2.5 to 3%. What it didn't do was to add, which it did in February. And this was all said last month. Said they were going to do this, but what they did not underline was that raising interest rates would be slow and steady, at a steady pace. They didn't endorse that. So the feeling is that because of the various panics that there are within the system, they will have to take maybe a different view. As far as Richard Branson is concerned, his Virgin Orbit is in buyout talks. It's 75% owned by the Virgin Group. There are two financial firms wanting to take. He said no more money in this because there was a problem with, as you know, with a failed mission in January earlier this year, and the Virgin Group shares in New York down 33% on that news. So there may be some kind of buyout happening there. As far as the UK is concerned, the back to work budget that Jeremy Hunt promised, well, yes, but some of the independent financial groups have been looking at this and saying it's an incredibly expensive way to get probably only about 110,000 people back to work, and that, the cost of the scheme works at about £70,000 per job. It's just a fraction of the large number of people who decided, because of the COVID and work from home and so on, why should we go back to work? Now, this is. I think we're going to see some interesting issues about this in the future. For example, now just think about this one example. Supposing that you bank with whatever bank it is in Nigeria. Just supposing those workers are actually taking your details home. What does that say about the security of your details? Do you think that we will have cases about privacy and about data being shared? I suspect we probably will. I don't think we've heard the last of this by a long chalk. Let me give you the latest on the UK strikes. Now, as you know, the junior doctors went back to work yesterday. The nurses and the nurses, ambulance drivers, and physios are actually sitting down and discussing a 5% rise. That puts pressure on the junior doctors. Junior doctors want much more than that, but it puts pressure on them to sit around a negotiating table with the government. Will they do that? They may not. And finally, our two big commodity stories this morning: oil, crude prices back again. Crude prices, say back again. At least they're turning positive. They're turning positive on the fact that maybe the panic in the banking sector is over. But we'll see about that. Gold fell today, big surge yesterday, and that's purely down to profit taking. Nothing to do with it not being a safe haven anymore. People saw the price rising, thought they'd take their profits and sit on their hands over the weekend. That's the global view.
Well, thank you, Michael. I don't think we still have more time. The producer is telling us we have just about 2 minutes to go. Thank you very much indeed. Now, for business updates across the African continent, Rochus Udiri is here with us. Good morning.
Good morning, all. Good morning, all. It's all tech today. It's all tech. I mean, we already talked about the election, of course, tomorrow. All eyes on IREV. I think BVAS did its job as far as accreditation is concerned. But folks in the space are going to be looking at how to improve things. But I think we should need. There was a report that we had on INEC distributing materials, and I saw very encouraging language from one of the members of INEC. Let's take a quick listen, because we gotta pump up the positivity. Here he is.
Permanently, the security agencies will be married with them like husband and wife. So they are not going anywhere. They are to secure the INEC materials and sensitive materials. So there is no cause of alert in terms of security. Apart from the ones we are seeing here, we have already cordoned Sokoto State. So anybody who is dreaming of causing confusion in Sokoto State will be dealt with decisively, and he will face the wrath of the law. So we are not joking here. We come for transparent election, and inshallah we are going to conduct that election come 18th of March 2023 in Sokoto.
That's That's what we need to hear. That's what we need to hear across all the states. You know, I know Peter Obi has lost faith in INEC, but people still have to go out and vote. So we don't want to depress turnout. INEC is going to make us proud. They're going to make us proud tomorrow. Amen. They're not going to mess up twice in a row. Amen. They're going to make us proud.
Hallelujah.
I'm telling you,
Hallelujah.
INEC is going to. Everybody come out and vote.
INEC, we believe in you.
Yes. Now, but still, despite the positivity, people are taking some things into their own hands. So here's a quote from Steers. If we take a look at what Steers is looking at, after decades of adapting to bring your own infrastructure, BYOI, model across Nigeria, providing your own water, electricity, and security, Nigerians have now begun collating their own election results. So here's one of the members of the tech center, Collate Africa. It's one of the part of the tech ecosystem. They're saying, they say help Nigeria have free elections by submitting the results from your polling unit. So basically, the tech ecosystem is making folks actually stay at the polling centers, put in their information, and it's basically a check on INEC to make sure that the numbers are there. We move to aero contractors. Aero contractors still on, it's all technology today. It's all technology. Aero contractors is putting forward mobile scanners. They are introducing these mobile scanners. They're not going to look like this. This is just like a representation of what scanning is to allow boarding to be quicker. But to use an INEC analogy, essentially when you go to check in, the check-in gates, when you use a mobile scanner with aero contractors, the data will move to the boarding gates. So in a way, you are accredited at the check-in center and then is uploaded to the boarding gates to allow you to quickly get on the plane. And so what they want to do is to reduce the amount of queues that are for people. Yes, I mean, think about it. I mean, you know, you should just be able to scan your data, get the passenger manifest, make sure that the number of passengers who are on that particular flight are captured. And so again, you won't have to be subjected to a second check. At least that's theoretically speaking, that's how it's supposed to be put together. So that's what Aero Contractors is introducing with these new mobile scanners. We move to the Africa Agri-tech Summit conference that just concluded in South Africa, and it was pretty much looking at how technology can improve agriculture. Some quotes from some of the players that attended it. Let's take a look at some. This is Mark Hassenkamp. He's at Red Dawn Agri-tech. Says it's an inevitable reality to use robotic labor to increase production yield. However, there is a cost in replacing manpower. It's inevitable and we need to remain competitive. We've got another quote from another player here. Lots of optimism from Norman Sealers, who is a CEO of Afrigi. Says the agriculture industry coupled with technology, I can't help but be incredibly positive. Combining human excellence and technology will make agriculture one of the most exciting industries in the next 50 years. How many agree with that? And then, you do, yeah? And then Zander Ernst, director of Alice Best Boderi, he says we need to look at how to raise effectiveness. This is Nigeria now, yield per hectare output on the farms. I don't think it's only about technology, but also about collecting more data. Rufai, you know you like to preach that. Data. That's our update for the continent.
So I think one of the iterations too for budding numbers by this aero contractors gig, scanner gig, is the fact that you can also use to iterate passenger numbers in a year and passenger data. So it's also a data point you can just take at that point, it opens up the polling unit, then you can have like a back-end server that saves passenger, numbers and details, and you can prorate that cost. But I think real conversations went on in South Africa and Joburg, and it really has to be said, we need to start looking at the possibility of robotics to be able to scale productivity. Because when you look at it greatly, yes, we need to be able to ramp up productivity. And how can you do that? Use of robotics to use of information technology, use of artificial intelligence, use of machine learning and AI. Look at the great impact of what GPT-4 is doing now in the world. At first it was ChatGPT by OpenAI, but look at the iterations of GPT-4
in a short period of time.
Look at what GPT-4 would even be doing in our own newsroom as journalists, to be able to get quick stories, documentaries, analysis, and things like that as the speed of light goes. So those are these iterations we should look at. And how can we do it? Nigeria must lead. The next president of this country must call all the tech people into a room and say, let's solve the problem of Nigeria. Rutus, my heart still bleeds when we give national security technology applications to countries like Israel. It saddens my heart. There are Nigerians that can crack it in this country, and we must lead, and we must grow this country. And that's what the next president of the country must do. Because if you harness the resources, the next 10, 20 years,
Growth.
Technology can be a big revenue maker for the country.
Of course. Agreed.
I totally agree. And in terms of the aero story, I hope that it would make other airlines will also take a lead from that, because at the moment, our airport structure is quite analog. There are a number of things that we do, time wasting, that would be amplified with the use of technology.
Indeed.
When you're talking about technology routes and talking about robotics, I thought to myself that the reason why we're perhaps not thinking in that direction largely is because we are hungry. Because there are bigger issues.
It's true.
Because a report was released just yesterday by Cada Harmonize. It's in the business days today.
The 26 states facing
26
hunger.
states face
Right.
acute food shortages as a result of certain, it mentioned an redesign, mentioned insecurity. And yesterday we talked about this when we looked at food inflation rates, about the fact that more Nigerians are moving towards food poverty, if there's a word like that. It's a big concern, and we should talk about this. And this is one of the areas that the next president would have to deal with decisively. They identified the months of June and August as critical months this year for people living in the up north, in some parts of the south, and it's a big issue.
Indeed.
So if we're talking about development, technology, whilst the world has moved forward, let us begin to deal with the issues that we have, even with regards to eating.
Agreed.
Okay. A number of specific things.
Yeah.
With regard to collation of results, citizens to the rescue, developing apps and all of that. Yes, after all, we've been told vigilance is important. People should protect their votes, and, voters wait behind at the collation centers and wait for the results to be announced. And so if there is an app that allows them to collect results and all that, fine. All of that is part of vigilance. But a caveat needs to be added, that only INEC is the body that is empowered to announce results.
True. Yes.
It will be amount to a violation of the law, and even for the broadcast media, it will amount to a violation of the broadcasting code for you to announce results ahead of INEC, because that in itself can create confusion, as we find now, because there are many platforms that have announced alternative results arising from the February 25 election. And INEC continues to say, well, the presumption of regularity is on its side, and it's the only body empowered by law to announce results.
Indeed.
Whoever is aggrieved can go and challenge the results in the court of law and provide the appropriate evidence. So citizens collating results, if it is for the purpose of gathering evidence and monitoring the situation and being vigilant, that is in order. So much talk about technology. Yes, as for aero contractors introducing these mobile scanners, that is fine. If it will reduce the waiting time on the queue and all of that. And if it will help eliminate this ugly situation that we have at our airports, whereby they will ask you to raise your hand. Instead of using scanners, they will be pressing your body, and you can see that some of them are interested in invading your privacy and pressing things that they should not press in the human anatomy. So if all of this will make our airports more decent, more human friendly, more customer friendly, as we find in Europe, where they use these scanners, and everything is so civilized. But here they are pressing your head, they are pressing your whatever. I don't want to be too detailed.
Of course.
In that, I leave the rest to your imagination. As for agriculture, it's a no-brainer. That after all, we moved from subsistence farming to mechanized farming, and now agriculture is so advanced that you can't even take technology out of it. However, one of the quotes you pointed out will seem to include the effect on human labor.
Yes,
because the more technology, the more robots, the more artificial intelligence you put in, it could affect the amount of labor that you deploy. That's number one. Number two, of course, is that this technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or robotics or whatever, the human element is always important.
Yes, indeed.
It's not as if it's an automatic thing that eliminates the value of the human being, which is the lesson about this electoral process. You put technology in, yes, we all had high hopes, but the human beings within the chain disrupted the technology.
Exactly.
So it has to be a combination of both human intelligence, and artificial intelligence for you to get the results. And if we talk about it in terms of increasing food productivity in Africa, the main concern that we have is that these African countries, there are disparities in terms of capacity, in terms of skill set, in terms of the enabling environment for the deployment of technology. While it's a good thing to promote, we must be aware of the disparities of the major challenges that African countries face as developing countries.
Indeed. Well said, Doctor.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.